Hi guys! Today we are gonna find out how to create pasta, but not in the usual way that you probably have seen in other tutorials using the particle system. We are actually gonna model our pasta because I find it pretty useful for some projects where you can't have, long render times. So you have to create a simple 3D model and you can't use particles or other stuff like that. So this is my setup. You probably find these two models in other 3D models that I have already shared online. Because now we're gonna actually go immediately to model our pasta. But let's see first the lights that I used. Okay, as you can see, we have a sun here that lights the whole scene with a strength of 5. Then we have 2 area lights in front of our model. Here is the camera, here will be our pasta, and here we have 2 area lights. One that illuminates the right side with this power, okay, and this color code. And here we have another area light with a higher power and this yellow color code. But we also have a rim light that is gonna lighten our 3D model from behind. It's another area light, and this is its color code. The last area light that I added is this one, which only lighten up the background of my scene, because you can see that if I hide it, the background becomes a little too dark. So for now, we're gonna leave it. I'm probably gonna add more lights in the future to illuminate the model, but now we can just start like this. Okay, so we're gonna place our cursor in the center of the placement, in the center of the plate. So I select my plate. Okay, I press Shift S, cursor to selected. Now we press Shift A, mesh, and we add a UV sphere, which is very little, so we scale it up pressing S. Okay. We're not gonna need the whole sphere, so I'm gonna delete half of this sphere, like this. Okay, and I press delete faces. To enter and exit edit mode, you know that you can press Tab and Alt Z to enter X-ray view. We press the right button and we click Shade Smooth. This pasta is a little too much even for me, so we're gonna scale it down on the Z axis. On the Z axis, yeah, something like this. We're gonna scale it even more. Don't worry if it intersects with the plate a little, it's not a problem. Okay, something like this is okay. I assign it a subdivision surface modifier. Okay, with a level 1. This is the base for the pasta, for the spaghetti that we are gonna create on our plate. How we're gonna do it? First of all, we are basically gonna create a lot of edge loops in this shape, in this geometry, and extrude them to create a base of spaghetti. And then we are gonna add a few more noodles using the curves. Okay, but first of all, we can't really leave it like that, too perfect, too spherical. So we're gonna move it a bit. I press Ctrl 1 to enter Vertex Selection, and then I press my proportional editing. We're gonna give it more realistic shape, more natural. So I select a bunch of vertices and I move them like this. Let's leave it like this because it's difficult even for me to imagine it like this. I rotate it just a bit. Okay. I press this vertex and I move it down. Okay. Now it works like this. We add. Actually, I think we're gonna apply a subdivision surface modifier at least one time because it's easier. So let's apply it. Okay, now we have a lot more vertices to work with and it will be easier for us. So it works like this. We have this loop of edges. Okay. Okay, this one. Let's take this one. I press Ctrl R and I insert other two loop of edges and I select the new loop that I created. And then I press face, extrude face along normals. Okay, we need another subdivision surface modifier to see how it looks like. It's not extruding enough, so I scale it and move it a bit up. Okay, and then I maybe add another edge loop in the center of this noodle and scale it so we have a more rounded shape. And I move it even a bit up. Okay, this is the trick, basically. We're gonna do it a lot of times until this sphere looks like a lot of noodles all together. Okay, we need to create some edge loops on the base and on the top of our noodles. Okay, now they really look like they are separated, you know, from the mesh. I'm gonna select these two face loops and extrude them. It's larger than the edge loops that I extruded before, but this is just because I want to you know, give this shape a look more natural. Okay, so we're gonna create even more noodles on this big one that I created. Okay. The most difficult part is to work on these noodles to make them look really rounded and not too square. It's just a matter of, you know, time and experience, because just extruding them, it's not really enough. Then you have to work a bit on them, creating other edge loops, modeling like you do with every other model. Okay, but we're starting to get something that is similar to what we need. You can slide an edge loop by pressing Shift V. Okay, so for those who are new to Blender in general, you can extrude a loop of faces by selecting them and then pressing E. Release the mouse, and then you can move it up by pressing G, Z, like this. Then Control R to add an edge loop. In this part we're probably gonna have just the tomato sauce, but for now let's do some noodles in any case. Yeah. Okay, I suggest to leave it like that for now because we already added a lot of noodles. Yep. Okay, perfect. Okay, now we're gonna add a few more spaghetti to our pasta. But since we can't have all the spaghetti just stitched one to another like that, we have to add some spaghetti that are free and hang like that on the plate and around it, draped on our geometry. We're gonna use cubes for that. Okay, and then we are free to obviously convert those cubes into mesh in case you need it. But for now, let's just add a simple cube. Our cursor is still here, so I press Shift A. I go on curve, and I usually use a path. I'm more comfortable with this kind of curve. Here it is. I'm actually not renaming anything, and this is really bad, so let's find out what I did here. Perfect. Let's move it aside a bit. When you press Tab, okay, and you enter edit mode, you see all the vertices of your curve, and you can move them until you get the shape that you prefer. I hide the background just for a second so you can better see what I'm doing. Okay, but first of all we're gonna give a shape to this curve. Okay, how do you change the parameters for a curve? You go in the right panel in Object Data Properties, and here in Geometry we are already here in Round and Depth. You can increase this value until you have the value that you want. I think something like this is okay. But it's fine. Yeah, let's leave it like that. Just be sure you fill the caps, okay? Otherwise you have bucatini. Okay. Okay. This is up to your taste, obviously. I'm just gonna place them in the way I like, but you're free to move them and shape them the way you want. You're probably gonna notice that you need more vertices to your curve. How do we add vertices to curve? You can add them in general by selecting A and then pressing F3, which open the menu where you can search all the commands. And usually I enter subdivide, segments subdivide. Here it is, and it adds you vertices, one vertices between two. So you add this, and this, and he created a vertex between all of them. In case you just need one vertices between just two vertices, like here you select them and then it's the same. I go in F3, research, and I enter subdivide, and he creates a vertex for me. Yeah. Don't worry if you see that the shapes are intertwining, it's not really a problem, and you're probably not gonna see it once you render it, or we're gonna, you know, adjust things until they look fine and okay. I suggest you to model, to create a 3D model that is fine from every angle. Because even if you need it just for one render and just seen from one point of view, you're probably gonna reuse that model for sure in the future, and you're gonna find out that the back of your 3D model is not good looking, so better just do the art job one time. Now we're just gonna duplicate our spaghetto by pressing Shift D, like this. We can move them where we need it, rotate it if we need it. And go on and repeat the process until we have all the spaghetti that we want on our pasta. I'm gonna speed up the video now because you have already get how it works, and let's see the result. You can delete a vertex by just pressing X and delete vertices. And you can also extrude a vertex from a curve exactly like you do when you're working on a mesh. So you press E and you can extrude it. Okay, now our plate of pasta looks realistic enough, at least for now. So before we go on and model the tomato sauce, I'm just gonna create material for this pasta, so we are gonna actually see how it looks like if rendered. So I select my pasta and I go into the material properties tab and I press new to create a new slot. I rename it. Okay. I think that it's gonna be a very basic shader, so I'm not even gonna change to the shading view because here I have enough informations. Let's go into the look dev view. Okay, for now our pasta is white, but we want it to be something more yellow. Yeah. Let's see how it looks like rendered. No. Yes. This is a fair color. So the code is this one. But you can change it a bit depending on what you really want. I'm also gonna slow down the roughness a bit and the specularity. Okay. Add a little bit of subsurface, very subtle, and remember to change the color of the subsurface. Yes, perfect. Now I select all the spaghetti like this, and I go here and select pasta. If you want, of course, to add this shader to all the spaghetti, you just have to click here and do copy material to select it. Perfect, absolutely perfect. Now we can skip to the part where we create the tomato sauce, and then we are just gonna do some adjustments to make it look even better. Okay, now it's the time to create our tomato sauce. And to do it, you can create a new mesh, like maybe a cylinder or something like that. But I prefer the easy way, so I'm just gonna select some faces from this mesh and duplicate them, separate them from this mesh, and that will be the base for my tomato sauce. So it's better to press 1 and go into front view, and then I select Ctrl 3 and Alt Z, and like this I can select faces in X-ray mode. I'm gonna select a lot of faces, actually, something like this. Okay, this is fine. We can obviously delete it after. But for now, I think it's good. Let's just remove a little bit more. Okay. Now we're gonna press Shift D and press the L mouse button to release it. Now we have just duplicated this mesh, duplicated these faces that I selected. But we also want to separate them from the pasta, so we are gonna press P, separate selection. Alright, now I go back to object mode, and we have two different meshes, even if it doesn't look like that, but you can see that here we have our pasta point 001, which is going to become tomato sauce. Yeah. But first thing first, we have to move it up a bit, or otherwise we won't be able to see anything. And then we remove the pasta material and we add a new material. Obviously red. Let's change the viewport. Okay, obviously we are gonna select a red color, something like this. We also wanna scale it up, yeah, because we don't want to see the pasta underneath it. And also in edit mode, with my proportional editing enabled, I move it up a bit like this. We're also gonna use some tools now to adjust it. But you can also do it like this. Let's first change the material. So now we have something like this, but the specular value can be something like 0.2, and obviously we have to decrease the roughness. Okay. For now I think it's fine like this. But we don't want all these creases and all these loops, because this was made for the pasta, but it's not okay for a sauce. So we go to sculpt mode, which is very useful when you want to do quick changes to your mesh. And we just select the smooth tool, okay, which is going to smooth all our vertices. We have a lot of vertices, so the sculpt mode, which is usually used in sculpting, will work pretty well. I decrease the strength, and if you want to grab some parts of the model and move them, you can just select the grab tool, like I'm doing now. You can press F to scale the brush and decide the size that you need for your brush. Now I just go back to edit mode and do some editing the old style by moving the vertices. We are gonna create some, drops of sauce going down on the plate. So I select these three edges and I press E to extrude. I deselect the smooth surface. But in case you need and probably you'll need this sauce to have some kind of depth and not just be a plain like it is right now. We can just add a solidify modifier. Yes, 0.1 is fine. Let's extrude here too, always pressing E. Okay, this is almost everything that we have to do. We have our tomato sauce, we have our pasta, our random spaghetti casually placed all around, and now it's just a matter of adding details. I'm gonna add more spaghetti, I'm gonna add a few details that I'm gonna show you, but you have already catched the main part of the tutorial. Let's first change a bit the tomato sauce material here, because I want to give it a bit more texture. So I'm gonna press Shift A. Here, let's see that I change it to shading viewport. Okay, now here I have my material, the tomato sauce of the object that I selected, and here I have my nodes. And now I'm gonna add some more nodes to this principal BSDF to create some small effect. I press Shift A and I add noise texture. And then I'm gonna add a RGB, mix RGB node. Before I connect these two nodes, I'm gonna select this slot and pick this color. Okay, now we can do it because otherwise we just lost this color. So I connect the color to the base color of my principal BSDF. This node basically mix these two colors, so white and red becomes something like pink. But we want to mix a light red and a dark red, something very dark like this. This is the factor that we're gonna use to help Blender to decide where he must show this color and where he must show the darkest color. So basically, remember to always go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and check if you have already enabled its Node Wrangler. Okay, Node Wrangler. Check if you have it enabled. If not, enable it. Why? Because like this you can see better your material nodes. How? We just click to our node and we want to see how this node looks like. So I press Shift, Ctrl and left click. This is the texture, the noise texture that Blender is applying to my tomato sauce. So first of all, we're gonna scale it up like this. I'm gonna add this texture here. Obviously, to see the wall material, you just click on the principal BSDF with Shift Control left click, and it shows you. If you want to see what the mix node is doing, Shift Control click, and here it is. I also prefer to apply the transformations to these saws, so I select it and I press Ctrl A, apply all transforms, object, and I set origin to the geometry again. Okay, now let's see it rendered. I think we have to increase the scale of the texture more. Yes, something like this is giving a bit more texture, a bit more realistic effect to our sauce. I think I'm gonna change something in my pasta material too, like making a more darker subsurface color, maybe increase the subsurface a little. I change the base color of the pasta a bit to make it more darker. Okay. Now, one of the last things to do is add some basic basil leaves on top of our tomato sauce. So I press Shift A, plane, and we're gonna shape a simple leaf. How? I move this plane aside so we can better see what I'm doing. And I quickly add the subdivision surface modifier with the level 2. Yes, I think it's fine. And immediately apply it. Now we have enough vertices to work with. So in edit mode, I just move this up a bit. And basically it's already finished. I move this part down a bit and then I select these vertices and move them up. I'm gonna create the shape of a real leaf. And I always select with the right click and press Shade Smooth. You can give it another subdivision surface modifier. The shortcut is Ctrl 1. I think it's better to move these vertices down a little more. Yes. I press Ctrl R. I add an edge loop and another one. And then I select them with Shift Alt. Or Shift Control if it doesn't work, and I move them up like this. Okay. Now we're just gonna extrude it a bit to give it some depth. So I select everything and I just press E, release it, and then move it down. Here it is. Now it's not just a plane, but a real leaf. Let's place it on top of our pasta. And we're gonna create a new material just for it. Obviously a green shade. This is too brighter and too fake, so I make it more darker, and obviously in this case we have to decrease the specularity. Okay. You can add a gradient to it if you prefer. I'm just gonna duplicate it and rotate it to have 2 leaves. Now I'm gonna move them all around. Yep. The last thing to do is add some cheese on the sauce. And in this case, we're gonna use a particle system because it's a very simple particle system with very few polygons. We're gonna use not even a sphere, but a ecosphere. This guy here. And we're gonna scatter it around our tomato sauce as it was basically some cheese. Okay, how it's gonna work? First of all, we're gonna scale it very much. Like this is still too much, and maybe we're gonna scale it also on the z-axis and move it until it's not a perfect sphere. It should look like a random piece of cheese. Okay, like this is fine. Actually, it's not very important if it's small, because you can also change the size of your particles from the particle settings, but let's keep it a bit small in any case. And this is the shape, this is the mesh we're gonna apply our particle system to. So I select it. Here, tomato sauce, I select it and I go into particle properties and I add a particle system. As you can see, it added these weird spheres, but we're gonna use not the emitter, but the air. Now we have a disgusting pasta with air, but first of all, let's change the number to something very low, something like this. Okay. The first things we are gonna do, we are gonna go into render. Render as object. Now we can change the object that we are gonna use, which is the cheese. Okay, and finally we have our cheese scattered all around. We have we have not enough particles, so I'm gonna bring this up to 500. Not enough already. Let's leave it like that and change here. You can change the scale of your particles and the scale randomness, which means that some will be smaller than the others. Okay, perfect. But we're not gonna have our cheese on all the pasta, we just want it in this upper part. So basically we're gonna add weights to our tomato sauce. So I just select it and I go in object mode, weight paint. This is all blue, which means that no weight is applied to my material, to my mesh, yet. With the brush selected and weight to the maximum value, I decrease the strength a bit and I start to paint. Yeah. The red color means that this will be the part with the higher concentration of particles. So we just want some gradient, so that the particles can decrease the more you go to the bottom of your model. I think it's fine, so I'm just gonna leave it like that and go to object mode. Okay, now we have to tell our particle system that he has to use these weights. And I'm just going to, first of all, I change the panel and I go quickly to Object Data Properties. This is the vertex group that he created, our weight, and we call it cheese. Now we are gonna find it more easily. We go back to the Particle System tab and we just go into Vertex Groups, Density, and we choose cheese. Here is the funny problem. You see that you already added a lot of particles, but you don't see it here. It's probably because we must have to apply or solidify modifier in order to do it. So let's apply it. We can choose a lower amount. Yeah. Let's assign a material to this cheese because like this it's too white and not really tasty. Okay, but I don't want to have more polygons and vertices than what I need for this render, so I'm gonna deselect for a second, I'm gonna hide for a second my particle system, and then I'm gonna press Shift H to isolate my sauce. Basically, I'm gonna delete all these inner faces which are useless, and I'm gonna leave only these faces here that creates this nice border, okay, this depth to my drops. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna first of all select a loop of faces with Shift Alt left and delete it. Now it's easy because these two parts are basically separated, so I press a random face, I press L, and he automatically selected all the inner faces of my tomato sauce. I can even move them aside, as you can see, and delete them. Goodbye. Okay, now our model has less vertices, but of course you can clean it up or already model it with less vertices, keeping the same method that I showed you, but creating a low poly version of it, or even using the decimate modifier. Okay, now we can add the particle system, and that's it. Okay, here we are. This is the final 3D model with all the small correction that I did. Basically, I just selected, as you have seen, a bunch of vertices in the center of my sauce and of my pasta, and I moved them up just a bit, and I added a lot more spaghetti all around the place to make it look a bit more realistic and tasty. I'm gonna show you how I created this super simple material for the basil leaves. I'm gonna show you here in the shading viewport. It's the old same principle BSDF. I just added a color ramp to the base color with these two colors. And a mapping and the texture coordinate node, just so I was able to, I could, in this way I could modify my gradient better. Remember to always use generated or at least object, or obviously UV in case you want to create UV for your 3D model. But I suggest generated because object can give some problems if you want to animate the model. And yeah, that's it. Let's have a look at the final setting for the lightning. Here we have a rim light. I decided to use as a rim light a point light. Okay, with this power and this shade of color. We have the same area light that enlightens the background, and then I have this light on the right side and this light on the left side, and another light here which illuminates the 3D model a little better, a little closer. And then we have our usual sun, which gives the whole scene a global illumination with 5 points of strength. And also remember to always check the contact shadows for every light that you put in your 3D model, in your 3D scene, 3D file, because if you don't, the 3D model will look a bit flat. You don't see the shadows as well as you should, so it's better to always enable it. Okay, this is our plate of pasta. Let's render it. Beautiful, absolutely amazing and tasty. Here it is. Here is finally our pasta 3D model, and I think it looks really tasty. So if you liked this video, please subscribe and press the bell button to get notifications. And always remember, in case you replicate this 3D model, to tag me and let me know, because I really want to see everything that you do when you follow my tutorials. I'm really happy to see it, and we're gonna see each other again in the next tutorial. So see you next week!